First thing I wanted to do was to share with all of you a recent poll that you may or may not have seen it in the paper, but we made ourselves a promise, the group. We basically ran with a core group of people for a while to kind of dot our I's and cross our T's and get ready for this whole thing. But we agreed with each other that we wanted to do two things before we rolled it out and before we started taking people's money. Of course, we were giving our money, but we were definitely trying to make sure. And those two things were, one, that it was a doable thing, affordable, that we could afford to buy Cal-Am. And you'll hear a report later on talking about that very issue. And the second thing was we wanted to make sure that we had the kind of public support that we felt was needed to carry this off. None of us actually wanted to fight windmills or do anything like that. Honestly, we consist of a lot of former business people and citizens and engineers and all walks of life, and our feeling is hitting our heads against a brick wall makes no sense. So when the poll results came back, we just couldn't wait to share them with everybody. The first question that was asked, if either Cal-Am or the Water Management District could manage all your water, who would you prefer it to be? And that's the result. The next question was, and we felt this was the money question, in an upcoming election there may be a ballot measure for voters in this area of the Monterey County. This measure might read as follows, quote, shall the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District purchase the local assets of Cal-Am, the California American Water Company, and become the sole provider of water in the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District? Okay, 54% to 20% with obviously a group kind of undecided, but 54% we felt was a doable kind of result for us to move to the next phase. We then asked the people a number of general questions both for and against public ownership to get their opinion on it, but to also, it's a classic polling technique where you get the person to start thinking about the different issues regarding the issue at hand. And then we went right back and asked that exact same question I just read to you. And that was the results of our poll. You can see that once people were engaged, it got better. Some of the undecided people changed position, obviously. Some of the Cal-Am people changed position. So what were the main reasons that people felt public ownership was the way to go? I thought this was interesting. Obviously, the one of them was the hope that water bills would be lowered, which I think would be an obvious guess for any of us. But the second one, and in fact the one that had the highest percentage in those questions, was the issue of keeping the money on the Monterey Peninsula. I think people are quite aware that over $20 million a year is shipped off to New Jersey. When the system is expanded with all the other facilities that are planned, that number is going to be closer to $50 million a year. So I wanted to address a couple of the other issues that came up with the why now. Cal-Am says this isn't the time to do it. There's too much going on and we all need to concentrate on what needs to happen. Clearly in 66, 78, 2005, and now they're saying the same thing in 2013. I don't think that's unexpected or unusual, but I want people to understand that the issue of claiming that now there's something magical and that all the other times were, well, a wish, but now it's a command, should understand. They'll say this in the year 2029 if they're still around. Another good reason on the why now is that the PUC has decided to delay the desal decision. And I'm also kind of curious what they're going to do about the fact that there's a competing bidder who has declared themselves the People's Water Project. And now that the PUC has said only private companies can do this, they actually have to consider them. I don't think they thought about that when they made that ruling. I think they thought they had cleared the way for all the management district trying to do a desal. I think they thought the rule was going to keep them out of that. But in fact, People's Water Project very cleverly filed and said, we want to be the private company to produce the water. So that will be interesting. The initiative will not slow down existing projects. We'll buy whatever is built. And that's the way it's going to work. I mean, we're not going to ask them to stop building things. My expectation is that by the time the vote's in and the proceedings are on their way, they will have built nothing. So, and I'm happy to buy nothing. We think the timing has never been better on this question of why now. The takeover costs are only going to go up with time, and we have confirmed public support. So when you think of all these things that we've talked about, it comes back to just one real clear concept, and that is it's time to pull the pitcher. Now, some of you might not be familiar with the baseball analogy, but one of the things managers are paid the big bucks for is to recognize when a pitcher is starting to fall off and lose his zip. And a good manager knows when that's happening and pulls the pitcher. And in this case, we're going to put an initiative on the ballot and we're going to ask each and every one of you, is it time to pull the pitcher? Okay? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. The next phase of our discussion, which is reasons that we think you should buy Cal-Am. I've asked Adam Scow to join us this evening, and he is the California Campaigns Director of Food and Water Watch, which you may or may not know is a national organization. They do a lot of research, they perform a lot of studies and so forth. And I've asked Adam to come here and provide us with a national perspective on the public versus private.
The base mission of our water campaign was to do this work, was to fight and work with communities to win public control over our most basic resource. As a young graduate of Cal, I went to DC, and I was really interested in working on the budget. And they say, oh, you're from California. We want you to look at ag and water policy. And it was like the furthest thing from my mind at the time. I thought that sounded pretty boring. And then I quickly got into the history and learned it was about the most exciting thing you could learn about and not know about. And it's something so fundamental. You think if there's one thing that we should have a government to manage on behalf of the public interest, if there's only one thing, it ought to be water. And it's been really exciting to work for this organization, working with community groups around the country. It's not a left issue, it's not a right issue. We've had great coalitions of all sorts of unusual suspects, and when you build those coalitions, when you can make some pretty exciting stuff happen. And I think you're on the precipice of doing that here in Monterey. Mark said it as well, 80% of all the systems in the country are publicly owned. I think it's 75 to 80% in California as well. That was not always the case. There was a time of private ownership in the very early 1900s. Even the city of San Francisco had a private utility. This might sound familiar, but the private utility owners were not making the investments needed in maintaining the infrastructure. The profits were not being reinvested, and they weren't willing to make them on behalf of the public interest. And if you really think about our water infrastructure, not only is it the foundation for our health, it's really the foundation for the economy that was built in the early 1900s. Clean water and wastewater are really quality of life economic issues. And it was the local, state, and the federal government in those early 1900s that made those huge capital investments. Because as you know, water infrastructure can be very expensive. National rate comparisons show customers of public utilities pay less. To no surprise to you, many agencies have done comparisons, and it's common sense. A well-run public utility versus a well-run private utility, all things being equal, the private utility makes profit off the top, and you're going to have to pay extra for that. And the California Public Utilities Commission, I think George is going to get into that, guarantees. They have a weird dual mandate. Not only are they supposed to somewhat protect the consumer, but they're supposed to protect the company's investment. And for those, as you can tell, there's a contradiction there. And over time, we've seen a PUC that has increasingly favored the utilities, whether that's Cal-Am, whether that's PG&E, Southern California Edison, often at the expense of the ratepayer. And this goes on and on and on every 3 years, and more often than that. Public takeovers, public water now. Several California communities have acquired public utilities. Of course, you've heard of the Felton story. Some of you might not have heard of the Montara story. The Montara is a community just north of Half Moon Bay that was looking to do this. and successfully acquired a CalAmp system about 10, 12 years ago before they were purchased by the German multinational. Some of you may know that for a time American Water, the parent company of CalAmp, was owned by a German energy company. They heralded water utilities in the United States as blue gold, and when they got here they started applying for rate increases of 50, 100%, 150% all over the country, and it really led to a massive backlash. Communities were quite outraged about it, and that is indeed what spurred the Felton community buyout, and the Montara community saw it happening as the German energy company bought it and took public control before they had to suffer the abuse. Several communities are currently in the process of doing so. Ojai, a nice little town in Ventura County, and the city of Claremont, dealing with a different water utility company called Golden State Water, but the same exact problems are in play there. And other communities are also thinking about doing it. But really what it takes is a well-organized community of what you're building here. Reasons, no-brainer. You guys are living it. High rates, substandard service maintenance, lack of local control. The question is not can it be done. It certainly can be done. It's really a community decision. We've had some great victories. There's been communities who have been in similar situations. We work with them after CalAmp and other utility companies tried to make it more difficult to make public acquisitions. We affirmed that right through the Illinois legislature 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago as well, New Jersey American Water. See, the money goes to New Jersey, but doesn't go to the people in New Jersey. It goes to the headquarters of CalAmp. New Jersey American Water tried to take over a system in Trenton, and we did a citizen referendum on that. 78 to 82% voted against New Jersey American Water takeover. It was a slam dunk after the mayor tried to force it down their throats. I think it was really important what Ron said about checking the other issues at the door. This is the California coast. I live in San Francisco. We're going to fight about development, growth until the day we die, and for next generations. And we can savor those fights and enjoy them for as long as we live. It is okay in water, and Mark can confirm this, to disagree about one issue and to agree about another issue. And that happens all the time in water. You know the saying, whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting over, and I'm sure some of us do our share of both. I know I do. Very important, the question of focus and discipline to see that common goal. The initiative is a wonderful tool for communities to take action and to solve a problem when there's a lot of gridlock, there's a lot of conflict, competing interests. The community rises up and says, this is our community. The Water Management District was created to do this. They haven't done it yet. Now we're going to do it. Now they're going to do their job, and we're going to solve two problems at once. So if the community can stay focused on that single issue as a strong coalition, you will win, I'm confident, and we're happy to help. So thanks for having me.